I mean, I come from a visual effects background. I have my own visual effects company, and I've been using LightWave for as long as I've been doing 3D pretty much. And on every project, we usually hit some roadblocks or some, bottlenecks. And so this tool set essentially is the sort of result of reevaluating all these roadblocks that we've had for the years and trying to figure out things on how we can make it better. The other thing that was nice, maybe not for everybody, but the extended cycle that we had for 2018, it sort of allowed to sometimes explore a little bit, and then when you find that the exploration might not lead where you wanted to go, to make adjustments with the developers themselves so that you could power through those things that might be an issue otherwise. One of the big things definitely is a preset system, because we had surface presets, we have texture environment presets, we have a few other preset areas that exist, but there's a lot of things that usually people set up that we don't have presets for. And for me, jumping from different projects within my company, one of the big issues was always if you had a surface or if you had an object and you wanted to use it in another project, you had to find all the files that belong to it. So you couldn't just copy the object, because the surface or the textures themselves that were used for surfacing might be in a totally different location. So unless you were extremely organized, and I usually am, but even if you are extremely organized, that is a pain in the butt, because you're just hunting around for files all the time. So the basic idea of the preset system, no matter what presets they are, is to include everything within the preset file. It allows you to, it's easy to maintain that way, but it's also, if you wanted to share it or pass it on, you would only ever pass on one file. Everything would be in it, whether it's textures, any externally referenced things, they would always be just within that one preset file. One other, let me just go into some of them here.
I'm going to turn the lights off too, so it's easier to see the screen. And if that light that I plug into your laptop, Oliver, is too bright, you can unplug
Sure.
that. So I'm going to turn the lights off so everybody can see that.
So another, where the presets become extremely helpful is IES lights. We've had them forever in LightWave, but you always needed to use an external application if you wanted to look at what the IES light actually is. And a lot of people aren't using them because of that problem. They're usually files on disk, and you have no idea what they actually do. So the IES preset system essentially stores an entire library, and then I think in this library, and I made this public with the tools, I think there's 49,000 different IES lights in here. And you can literally just, if you have a light selected and you click on any one of them, you can see that the light will adjust to whatever the IES might be doing. And again, you don't have to worry about this. Where is the IES file stored? It's always within the preset. So when you actually click on a preset, what happens is that it unpacks the preset and stores the IES file itself in the lights folder of your content structure. So with that, there's just no file copying on your own terms that you have to do. The other thing that's nice about this is, even in the old ways where you had an external application where you would load an IES file in to check it, it might look, the preview that they give you might look different than what LightWave actually renders. So in this particular case, when you have a preset and you add it to this library, what actually happens in the background is that preset or that light, there's a scene that's being set up, it's being rendered by ScreamerNet, and then that thumbnail is being added into the preset system. So whatever you see here in the preset browser, that's really what the light will look like when you get it. So it's a one-to-one representation. Any questions about light presets? No, nobody using them. Hopefully people will, oh, actually one more thing about them is when you hover over them on the bottom here, you actually see the lumens value of what they actually are. So, if you're trying to use a stadium light in a living room, you're probably not going to get the result that you want. That's just not how IES lights work. So you can easily see, if you have inside of living room, you will probably want to have a smaller range lumens to work with them. The other thing that you can do, and I'm not really going to show it on this, but you can search for presets. So, if you want a specific lumens value, let's say you work on an interior shot and you want something between 200 and 500 lumens, you just type it in, search for it. It will give you a filtered result here, and then you can now work with that. You can then also, what it actually does, it looks through the preset library, copies those presets into a special preset library that's called filtered, which then you could actually rename, and so now you have something that says only living room IS lights, for example. That's up to the user, what you want to do there. Taking this a bit further, or actually the IS lights were, out of the whole entire preset system, was really the thing that started it all off for me, just because there was nothing, there was nothing in that regards, and I hated having to hunt in other applications or in other third-party applications just to see what the preset looks like. And like Ken is saying, the whole LightWave preset system, because that's really all that it's using, it's the same shelf that you've seen since, I don't know what version introduced it, but 6. So it's the same exact thing, but when I added 49,000 presets, it kind of showed the age. and then Ken did some pretty amazing work in order to make it what it is today, so that it's actually usable and you could change preset libraries and not have to wait forever. I mean, there's just so many of them. Once I got past that hurdle, you have other things where, let's go to the model presets. So model presets are sort of the same thing. There's all these kit bash sets that are available for free, from all these different places. There's all from other applications, whether they're in OBJ format or FBXs, whatever they might be. But they usually have external files associated with them. There's a library by CG Access. I don't know how many people use that, but it's a fairly inexpensive library that has a ton of stuff. It has textures and all that kind of stuff in it. So every time you want to use them, you'd have to copy the model, usually OBJ, because it's not an LWO, and you have to copy the textures as well, and that's a pain in the butt. Whereas now what you can actually do, you can go in here and, let me just pick something. I don't know, probably a lot of people have heard of the DMI car collection. I don't know how or who initially did it, but it's just a huge amount of vehicles of all kinds of different things. So once you add them to the library, and you can do so by either loading an object in here and adding it one by one, or you can add an entire directory full. So if you have your object stored in some location, you just click Add Directory, select the directory, and it will make all these thumbnails for you. Let me go to one. Another thing I just finished, we'll go through some of the kit bashes that exist. So let me see. So here's, for example, from there's a site, badking.com, and these are some of the kit bashes that are available there for free. And you can quickly just select the. I need to actually check. You can quickly select one of them and bring it into LightWave. It asks you whether you want to keep the reference external or whether you want to copy that mesh into the content folder of the project that you're currently working on. You can add it as a new project, or you can replace the selection. Scott Wheeler, who's also here, somewhere back there, asked for the specify subfolder, so that you can actually, because by default, every object used to be just stored into the object folder of the content directory. And with a subfolder, you can just specify, a subdirectory that you might want it to be in. So if it's objects, buildings, it would copy it into objects buildings. But by just clicking on it, you can, very easily just load any of these objects in, if you want anything else. So it's very easy to, add all these different things. If there's textures assigned to it, the textures would load just as well. Let me see. There's things where, let me clear this. For example, one of the things I just did yesterday is these tree collections. Because again, it's one of those things where you might have all these different collections that you bought into, but typically, unless you're really good, you don't remember what they all look like. So with something like this, it's very easy to browse these libraries now and just add them. So if we just take one of these objects here, and unfortunately right now there's some things that are hopefully getting fixed in LightWave, but the way they're all UV mapped and they have clip maps and things like that, but that doesn't show in OpenGL right now, so you actually have to go into VPR and render them. But so it's just a quick way of, getting some of them in here and load them all. And what I usually do is when I add them to the library, I usually normalize the objects so they're always 1 meter. Meaning if you recall them, depending on what your scene setup is, if you want a tree that's, God, sorry, it's meters, not feet. But if you want a 10-meter tree, then you just have to scale it by 10, and that's it. So I find that's good practice in terms of if you have something in the preset library, put it to a normalized scale so that you always know when you recall it what to do with it. So that's there's literally I can go through some of these objects. There's hundreds, and again, it's very easy to add them yourself. You can just download the library and just give it to the directory, and it will just go through it, make all the thumbnails, put them in here. And again, on disk, it's just a single file. It's just a preset file itself. There's no external geometry. It's like if you copy that preset, that contains everything that you might need. You can go anything about object presets that people have questions.
If there are textures associated, that would show those.
Yeah, like the trees, for example, have all textures. So if you go to some of the libraries here, you can see that the way they're set up, and it could be anything. It could be you could have some of these objects I have set up for Octane, other ones I have set up for the native renderer. So it just really depends on what you're doing. And every time you do it, you can if you look again in the preset shelf, it will also on the bottom here, it will tell you where the preset originated from. So when you imported it, it'll tell you. So just in case you might have it somewhere else, and you don't have to. Actually, the other thing, you don't have to embed the geometry in the preset file because some people might not like that. Like if you store your geometry library somewhere on the network and you're never ever going to move it, there is no reason necessarily to store the geometry within the preset because you can always keep it external and go back to it. But if you do move around and you might not always have that folder in the same location, then it's best to embed the geometry within the presets because that way you always have it and everything that belongs to it. Again, another feature request by Scott is the library folders, which is actually, I wish I could take credit for it because it's actually pretty cool, but it's all him. It's if you have a directory with subdirectories that you're adding to the directory of presets, it will automatically create these folders for you and put the objects that are within that subdirectory into a specific library folder. So you guys can all thank Scott for that because that's all him. Other questions about the preset system? About the object presets? No. Nobody's using that either. Jeez.
So when you unpack it so when you unpack the object, by default, images would go into the images section
Yes.
of content, but you could choose subfolder, type in a keyword like tree A, tree B, and then go to images, tree A.
Exactly. So when you use this and you type in here, for example, I don't know what I clicked on now, but tree A, whatever it is, the geometry gets stored in the content objects tree A folder now, and the images would be in the content images tree A folder. So it will do the corresponding images or corresponding folders for each of the locations.
Can you put like a forward slash and do another subfolder?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
You
So
can map out where you want
you can go however deep you want to go.
That's good.
But you don't have to type it, you can pull up a file request.
Yeah, actually, okay, I will take credit for something here because because Scott asked for the file requester, and I'm like, I hate typing in the file requester. So actually, if you just type in this, whatever, it doesn't matter whether it exists or not, it will create it within that sub content folder. So it'll create this folder structure now within objects, or within the content objects, it'll create a trees, and then, well, however you would pronounce that.
If you did do the file requester, I suppose it would default to the objects.
Yes, it goes in the objects, and then of course in the file requester, let's do that. So it will default in whatever the content structure, which I don't have really set up here. And then in there, of course, you can create a new folder and go folder and folder and folder, however deep you want to go.
I like your typing method better, but I appreciate that this is there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it was mainly, speed sometimes. And I don't want you to be bound to the file requester, because sometimes that's like a couple extra steps, but it's good to have both. That's objects. Let's see. And so the other thing, and unfortunately, actually, I can't really show that too well, but so image presets, that was another big one. Let me switch to something that's this one is a large one. So image presets is the same thing. I used to find myself, I own so many image libraries, it's crazy. But a lot of times I find myself, yeah, we'll get to that. But the image libraries is the same thing. I own so many of them. But the problem is finding things. And a lot of times I find myself going to Google, typing in, finding a certain thing. It's faster than finding them in the object list, in my own preset library. So it's the same exact concept. I don't know how many of them are in here, but there's a lot of images in there, and you literally just point them to a folder. It will categorize all the subfolders. It will tell you the size of the image. You can see down here. And with that, as soon as you click on it, and unfortunately I can't do it because these are actually external presets. So these will not include the image within the preset, but they just point to an image on disk. Because otherwise the presets would just get too large. I didn't find that was a reason to do that. But with that, you can easily, when I double click on one of these, you get the option of copying that particular image from whatever external location into your content library. Again, with the subfolder and things that you could specify. You can add the image automatically as an image node to the material. So, because again, it's one of those things where I find myself, if you go into the surface editor and then you go into the nodal editor, you always have to go, search in the node for images, add the image node, add all these images and stuff like that. So I wanted to speed, not connecting the image node, but to speed up the workflow of creating the image node and assigning the right image, things like that. And then since there's a lot of PBR materials now, sometimes there'll be a texture like a concrete, and there'll be a concrete underscore bump, concrete underscore spec, all these kind of things. If you want all the images that pertain to that set to be loaded, you just click the import group, and that will load all those images as well. So it's just a fast way of getting images, well, of finding images visually and putting them within LightWave where they belong. So that's this particular set. Again, I can't show this because these are all external on my server, actually. I didn't think about that. And of course, you can search them. It's always, you can see that in this particular case, the description on the bottom is where they were initially stored. So a lot of the libraries at least have some sort of this is a concrete material. These are all the concrete materials. These are all the metals and things like that. So when you actually search within the preset folder for metals and things like that, it's easy to find. So it's searchable. It's not quite as quick as Google, but it's not bad. You can store this preset library anywhere you want. Ken, again, has added something to the pathing system of LightWave where you can have the different location lists for these libraries. So you can put it on a Dropbox, you can put it wherever you want, and with that you'd always have the same library wherever you go. That's one of the things that you can go. They don't have to be stored locally on your machine. So especially within an office, you don't really want them to be stored on your machine. You want them to be stored on some sort of server that all the artists have access to. So, and a nice thing about how the preset system works, if any of the artists working on this adds a preset to the system, it immediately shows up in the preset system on somebody else's machine. So it's kind of like, when you remove or add a preset, the next time you open that shelf, or the next time, even if the shelf is open and you click on the shelf, that preset will appear. And that's a nice little feature. It's sometimes the little things that make it so cool. So that's objects and images. The other thing I didn't think about is we've gone through that, is the HDR presets. So I don't know how many people have used SIBL in the past, hopefully a lot. So it's basically a quick way of, or the HDR presets aren't just the HDR images themselves, but when you actually click on one of these images, and I can't find it because I don't have it with me, but what happens is you can again copy the external asset, because it's again external because the image is just too large to be for it to make sense to be included in the preset. You can copy that asset into the current project folder, and you can set up a whole bunch of different things that, like the environment light, all the new sort of things that you have within LightWave now in terms of how to set up an HDR for lighting and how to get the best result there. You can set up a shadow catcher plane, all these sort of things that you would otherwise normally do by hand. You don't have to do it, but you can do it. You have it as an option. And you also have the option of, you can see a clear previous environment image from LightWave, so you can easily just click through them and cycle through the different images that you might have. And it's like, hey, let me try that HDR, let me try this one, until you find what you're looking for. And the scene still remains tidy. It's not like you're going to end up with a crap load of different images that you then have to later on clear out. One system that I always thought, or actually I've gotten a lot of requests for, actually this is, it's fine. Let me do toward some simple objects here. People always in the LightWave world complain about how hard it is sometimes to set up instancers or to reuse something that they've set up with instances. And so one of the things that I've done with the instance preset system is instance of presets. So I have a few in here, and the only thing I brought with me is the typical grass kind of thing that people want to set up. And you can see kind of in the thumbnail representation, it's fairly dense. It's not, there are brighter spots, so it's not completely covered, but there are some spots. So and all you have to do, like you can see this preset is on a sphere, but it doesn't, on a ground plane, but it doesn't really matter. So all I have selected here is some sphere. And I'm just going to double click on that preset. And as soon as you do, all the objects that belonged to the preset, like the grass leaves that were part of that preset, have been loaded in because they're all stored within this preset. So if you render this now, you actually get the same coverage here as you get on the grass itself. So everything is always contained. You don't have to worry about, when I did this instancing setup, where were the objects that I was actually using. It's irrelevant. You literally just add them. The other cool thing about this is if you use surface distribution, like in the old ways, what we'd have to do is we would go to the sphere and we would copy this instancer, and we would go to, for example, the toroid, and we would paste this instancer. Oops. And you can see when you do that, it makes it incredibly hard to reuse your instancing setup, because now you got to go in the instancer again and set it back up. Because how do I get the same distribution? Whether this is a yard or whether this is a soccer field, whatever it is, you want to maintain the distribution. And so what I've done in the preset system, when you store a preset, it actually stores the surface density in terms of how dense is this in relation to the surface area of the object. And when you restore it, so if we could select the toroid again and we restore that now on the toroid here, you'll see that we'll get the same surface distribution as what we have on the sphere. And again, that's important because you want to be able to reuse your presets in all these different areas, and you want them to look the same. So if you actually look into the sphere object, you can see there's 1,548 instances, but in the toroid object, there's 9,767. And it basically computes that on the fly. The other thing that you can do is, so for example, I have a flowers preset here. When you bring it up, there's an option that says keep existing and just add a new instancer. So when you do that, you can now see that we've just added flowers to the already existing preset. So you can layer things and save them as layers. So it's very granular in terms of what you can store. You can do, let's add the rocks here, keep existing again. And so now you have some rocks. You still have the same limitations within the instancer as you would have otherwise in terms of the intersections of things. But in terms of getting scenes together and sort of creating your own sort of instances or your own terrain tools, this should be a huge step forward. If you then go, for example, and take one of the rocks, or take the rock that's being instanced, and not the scenes, the model preset, and let's just take one of the trees. And just any single one of them here, it doesn't really matter. And we will say, instead of adding to it, we'll just replace it. You can now see that you simply just added the trees to this entire thing. And if you wanted to go into the instancer for the toroid and just adjust the trees, you can just let's say make it 10%. 20% of the scale. And now you have all these little pine trees. And you can, of course, save that entire instancer preset. The preset system itself, they seem so simple. And really, they are simple. But they touch so many different aspects of the software and so many different facilities of modules within the software that, they helped to find bugs that I think have been in there for a very, very long time, and were usually causes of crashes that are incredibly hard to reproduce, without this. So there was so much benefit in doing these. And actually, hold on, do it on a sphere again. So we'll go to the Fiber Effects presets. So same sort of thing, where you can just load one of those. And, so now you have, come on. So now you have, one preset. Now, any one of these presets now, like here is a reddish one. You can add that as a layer. And that's, again, the important bit here as well. So you could have base fur for a character, for example, and you could have like little peach fuzz and longer hairs and stuff like that. And you can save them all as different presets, but then layer them when you recall it. So we'll just recall them here. And what you'll find once it loads is that you now have the two presets combined. All of these things are things that you can do without the preset system, obviously. You can set them up all by yourself, but to maintain the density now on a larger object and to maintain also the length on a larger object has always been sort of a lot of guesswork, within Fiber Effects. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to take out. Take out all the guesswork and make it so that you can literally just concentrate on the art and making it work together. Other than that, same thing for the volumetric system. That's one of my favorite things probably in LightWave now. Is one second, control. Set up something quickly here. So, the LightWave guys, or LightWave group, sorry, LightWave guys, but they added this little volumetrics tab, which really is freaking fantastic, because all we have to do now to get volumetric lights is just click that one button, and it's pretty darn cool. I mean, you can adjust them obviously a lot more, but the one thing that they didn't have time to do was to integrate that into the preset system. So I took what I had for the other things and sort of made these presets where all you have to do is you click on them, and again, if there's images used, because you can use nodes now to work within the volumetric system, so for image maps and all kinds of stuff that you can actually do. But it's very easy to just go through them and visually see what you're going to get into, and just sort of use them that way. You can do crazy stuff where let me see this one. You can do crazy stuff where this particular one sets up a whole entire node system in terms of where the light is compared to the camera. So as you move the camera in and out, come on, because I'm in the perspective mode. Running out of screen state. So as you go further and into the camera, you can see that the volumetric system actually changes. So you can have all these things that are pre-configured and just recall them at any point in time and reload them. I did a motion system as well. This one is fairly crazy because it involves other tools within the toolset too. But it's again the same principle. If you had your favorite light flicker that you've done in your past, or your favorite camera shake that you've done in the past, wanting to store and recall that, you could always save the motion, or save an envelope. But the problem is finding it after an extended period of time. And so with this now, you don't have thumbnails for them, because initially I thought about making an animated thumbnail. Let me just real quick see preset shelf here. Initially I thought of making an animated thumbnail, but then I realized the thumbnails are so small that it doesn't really help that much. So they'll just have different color identifications in terms of whether they're envelopes, preset envelopes, motions, hierarchical motion format, or poses. You can store poses as well and recall them. And also the thing about animated presets was that, we could figure out a way on how to do it, but in order to create the preset, you would then have to create that little thumbnail, and whether that runs through your scene and creates a QuickTime, whatever it is, it just would take too long. So I couldn't figure out a good way of doing it. So that's why you see colored tiles, essentially. But the nice thing about this, and again, I didn't take the source file with me. There's a library by Maximal that at some point in time was freely available. I don't know whether it still is, or whether they might have taken the download down or whatever it is. But I converted that entire library, which is, I think, 4,200 motions of a regular FBX skeleton. And I converted them to H motions, which is really just hierarchical motions. So whatever hierarchy you might have within your FBX structure, you can literally just double click on them and it will assign it. And so you can easily swap out the different motions for the character.
Searchable, right?
These are searchable, the same thing. All of them are searchable, and so if you...
So if you want to find like walk cycles.
Yeah, so we'll go through, you can see let's search for a walk. And, well, unfortunately, there's a lot. So, these are, you can see now it switched to a filter directory, and these all have some, the search term walk, or the word walk is within the motion itself. So, you could now save and rename this library to just call it walks. And that's, pretty much a motion system. The one thing, I don't want to go into every tool because we won't have time, but the one cool thing about this is that when you restore a motion, there's what it currently does for the H motions is if you have a character, an FBX character, for example, and you have all these animations, And if you only select certain joints within the character, the motion will only be restored onto those joints. So you might have a walking character that you had a walking motion, but then you might have a flailing arms motion or whatever it is. And if you only select the character's arms and recall one of these motions, the new motion will overwrite what is on those arms. And so you can very easily then construct your, build your own sort of motions out of all the different subsections of the preset libraries, essentially. That's, I don't know how much more I can talk about the preset system without boring people to death. I can go on and on, but I think it's so cool just because I honestly, truly believe for LightWave users, it's going to change the way they work. At least I hope so, because finding and collecting objects from different projects and using them in other projects has been so painful in the past that I really hope that this will alleviate all of those concerns. The one thing that I'm hoping a little bit is that people use these systems to share materials as well, or to share, object libraries, whatever it is. I mean, all these different Greeble libraries, stuff like that. So you could essentially zip up your presets for that pack and make them available. You can do that whether you want to do it commercially or whether you want to do it as a freebie. So are there any people that also composite here?
Sometimes.
So again, I wear so many different hats. It's crazy, and I do think about a lot of the different issues that people run into. So I'm going to load something up here. There's actually a couple different things. Are any people using Fusion? Well, that counts as using. So come on. So I am sure there's, for me, Fusion, that's what I've always been using. I've used Nuke in the past too, but I've always stuck with Fusion. I am sure whatever I'm about to show is something that can be done in Nuke as well. I don't know about After Effects, maybe, but that's foreign to me. But you can definitely do it in Fusion. And one of the things that I wanted to show that I don't think a lot of people actually know about it, but it's extremely useful. I have a very simple animation here. And, it's just a couple objects. And if I were to render this out, and, in LightWave we have a nice buffer system now where you can specify the different buffers that you want to have, and then you can all save them nicely in a single EXR file. Hopefully everybody's using EXR files to save their stuff. If not, you really should. It's very, very beneficial. And one of the benefits is if you render out the sequence, which I have done, and don't want to bore you to watch it render, but if you then go into Fusion, and we can load this sequence. Come on. Desktop, come on. So we have the sequence that's rendered out here. And a lot of times, in this particular case, I post-multiplied it so I get rid of the backdrop. So this is actually what the sequence looks like rendered. And let's say you want to put it in front of a different sky. So you could, of course, set up your sky dome and everything like that in LightWave and re-render it. But you don't really need to. And one of the things about EXR is that it has the ability to store camera transforms. And for people that used EXR Trader in the past, from Michael Wolf, that had always been included. But fortunately, there's Jamie over there who added it to this release of LightWave. And so what it actually means is very simple. You don't have to bring in your 3D scene into Fusion or anything like that. You don't have to worry about that the 3D artist gives the compositor the correct files to redo it. But you can simply there's a note in Fusion that if we have it here, all you feed it is you feed it the EXR sequence here. So all I do is I drag the EXR sequence in. And you can now see within the sequence that that's actually what the camera was doing. So that's now a 3D scene that's set up for you automatically within Fusion of what the camera is doing. And it does this by literally just reading the metadata on the EXR. And once you do that, you can very simply, you have a little sky image, you have a little shape that you put the sky on, you merge these two together, you render it out. Oops, it'd help if you render it out. And so now you have a sky dome. And you can easily, put those two together, and you can just swap out the sky if you want something else. But the nice thing about it is you don't deal with external files. The data is already contained within the EXR, and you can just, easily reuse it that way.
Looks like the camera was not moving in space, but it feels like the camera's moving in the render.
In this, the camera is moving in the. You're right, actually, the camera isn't moving here. Hold on. Yeah, that's probably something actually. I might have to revisit this note because I wonder if there's a slight difference in terms of how the metadata is stored to compare it to EXR Trader in the format. That could be. I'll check into that. But regardless of that, whatever that note is doing, that's one way. It's nice for some people. Sometimes you want to do a mask, and if you recreate just a ground plane in here and things like that, it's very easy to. It's just very easy to get the camera data into LightWave. You don't have into Fusion. You don't have to deal with FBXs. You don't have to deal with other files, hoping that it works. This, especially when I'm done with this note, and I'm going to do it tonight again, it'll actually work correctly. Another thing about it is, if you're in LightWave, and a lot of times, again, this is a very simple scene, but you might get the request from the compositor, hey, I need a mat for this particular object because I want to correct it, or can you give me a mat for some other part? And one of the things I've done is. Actually, I might just show it. So you can see that LightWave has all these default buffers, but LightWave also can do custom buffers now. And the way to do them is you just literally create a custom buffer in here, call it something. And the way it works in the surfaces, you then will see under the outputs here, you will see that is actually the custom buffer. And you can pipe whatever you want into that buffer. And it will, for example, if I do this, and that was what's the surface? That's the cube. So if we go here and we select that buffer, you'll only see the cube rendered in that buffer, for example. Again, it's one of those things that's, if you do it with just one surface, it's easy to set up manually. But if you have a whole bunch of them, you probably don't want to do that by hand. And so what I usually do is, because I also don't know, when I make the scene, what might the compositor need? He might come back, today I need the cube, tomorrow I need the toroid, and it's like one of those things, like I hate going back to this stuff. So you literally, in this particular case, you can just select all the objects, and you have a couple different AOV tools here, where you can either create the AOV based on an object group, which means if you make an object group, it will take all of these objects and all their surfaces and put them in one buffer. Or you can say you can have a per object group, which once you click that, you can see it did something down here. And if you actually look at your setup now, Control P, you can now see that you have an object. I do an identifier of OBJ, and then you have a new cube, new ground, new sphere, new toroid. Once you render that out, it's again, if you're in Fusion, we'll just add it again here. If you're in Fusion, I made a custom tool where you can essentially say script, and there's here a mat extract. So because I wanted to make it so simple for the compositor that they can't possibly complain that the 3D guy screwed up. So in here, you just literally, you can see these are all the different mats that were automatically created. You can select them and hit OK, and now here's your cube. If you run this, you could copy this and paste it now, and then you could run the script again, select the toroid and things like that. So it's very easy for the compositors to get exactly what they want. The AOVs can be made based on object ID, per surface, surface groups. If you have multiple surfaces selected, if you had all your gold surfaces selected, you could make a gold group. There's a depth AOV, there's an instance AOV, because if you have multiple instances right now, there is really no way of getting a pass where you could separate the instances. With this, it will give you separated different colors for each of the instances.
What's the AOV?
It stands for arbitrary output variables. It's literally just another buffer, just another word for buffer.
How does your depth AOV differ from the regular depth buffer?
Okay, so it depends on the compositor. I'm gonna put it very politely here. Depth AOVs can't really be anti-aliased. If you do, then there's going to be something wrong with the depth. But especially in LightWave land, people have been rendering white fog passes to get their Z depth forever, because they feel like that's going to give them the best result. So what the depth AOV does, it essentially duplicates that in a way where you again have the anti-aliasing back. I'm sort of promoting bad habits by doing that, but it's just because people have been asking for it for so long, and it's just, yeah.
But if you're using that pass to layer a light fog into the comp, it'll work.
Yes.
It's especially if you have overlapping objects.
The thing is, you can use that pass for so many things, not just for Z depth, and that's where the benefit comes in if it is anti-aliased. But if you're using it just for Z depth, non-anti-alias is perfectly fine if you know how to use it. The other thing that now LightWave also LightWave has a coverage buffer now that actually works, which we never really had. So that's another good thing. I did want at one point in time to tie the Z depth, because right now it's a set variable within the Z depth buffer where the fog is, and I wanted to tie it into the GUI actually, but that's something that we still have to work out. There's a couple of hooks missing. But then that gets in there. You can also easily now set an ambient occlusion pass. There's a parts pass, so if you have a single object with disconnected geometry, it will, even though it's only a single object and it has only one surface, it would split it up into different parts. So that particular one is very useful for Substance Painter, where sometimes you only have one surface, but you have all these different areas that you want to individually treat. And so you can do that with a color ID pass, or with a parts color ID pass. Other than that, there's so much in here. But do people have specific questions?
And this is all included in
That's all included. There's 380 tools right now as of today. Oh, there's what?
There's a whole modeler tool set as well.
Yeah, this is only layout. I'll give you another example of something I did last night, kind of so you can a little bit understand where the tool set is coming from. When I converted the tree library, it was a horrible experience converting it, just because the person that had done it, the images didn't even line up with the UV maps of the trees. They were flipped. And so, there's so much, there's all these little helper scripts that I write myself in order to do these things quickly and not have to spend a day converting these sort of assets. But one of the things that I found is if you load, they're OBJ format. So if I load OBJs into layout and then I start texturing them, because again I want to use the new PBR method and all that stuff, so I set up my textures and I'm done. I like it. I like how everything looks. I copy them onto the other trees. Now I have 10 OBJs and I want to save them as LWOs. I don't know how many people have ever done that, but the only way to do that is by one, go save object as, switch the OBJ to LWO, and save the file. And again, if you have 100 objects, you have to do that 100 times, and it's madness. So I wrote a very simple script that all it does is it takes whatever the file name is, which in this case it's OBJ, it writes it as an LWO, and that's it, in the same folder. It's very simple. It's actually a 5-line tool, but it's 5 lines that save you so much time if you do that kind of stuff. And there's tools like that in there that they seem so simple, but they save you so much time on a daily basis in so many different areas. I mean, I've had a lot of time to write these, which is why there's 380 of them, and it's always growing. But there's just, there's so much of that. So does everybody know what UDIMs are? Kind of?
I do, but Dave, do you know? Okay,
So,
Dave does not.
it's a nice way, and like typically a UV map is in a space of 0 to 1. So you have your little square, and everything is usually happening within that square. That is very limiting when you have larger objects or larger sections of an object within that same square, because that texture resolution at some point in time, depending on what you have in there, becomes very small. So UDIMs, I don't actually know exactly what it stands for, but it allows you to have different tiles. And so, you have your original one, which is just called 1001, and then it goes to the right 10, and it goes up however many you want. So you have tile 001, 002, 003, and so on. And that can all be still part of the same, it's all part of the same UV map, but it's just a different tile. So if you have a character that had, you could put the face of that character in, like where typically the entire character might be in a UV space of 0 to 1, you could now take the face and move that face into a different tile. That still gets the same image resolution, like you still have, if your image resolution is 2048 by 2048, that's now 2 tiles of that image resolution. So, you have the first tile will be whatever the body, and the second tile will be the face. So you can increase, essentially, your UV space and texture resolution.
It stands for U dimension.
Really? That's it?
Can you believe it?
I did not know that. So-
U dimension.
So to show this in a simple way, and LightWave tools itself, to a certain extent, work better with that now. When you actually create a UV map, you can specify what tile you want the UV map to be created in. But we're just going to create the typical thing here. And so this, for example, is, oops, let me just, hold on. Actually, no. So this would be, in UDIM terms, this would be considered the first tile. So that would be 10001. And, let's say, you can tell if you were using an image of, let's say, 2048 by 2048, the image would be, or all the mapping would all be within that one image. So this particular area would get a very small amount of that 2048 by 2048 resolution. But maybe you want something that's a lot higher res in that case. So, and hopefully I have this installed. Oh, damn it. I don't have it installed. 1 second. So there's again, some of these things, definitely it'd be great if more work could be done there by the LightWave group. But because we don't really have a way to select islands in LightWave. But DStorm actually has a plugin that allows you to do it. But one of the tools is, for example, if you go to the 2018 pack, and you go for the UV time. So if we just wanted to move something, you can see there's a move the tile up, left, right, up, and down. So if we move it to the right, and you have to select polys. Very bad of me, but so if you want to move that to the right, you now essentially move that into the second tile. You can maximize this tile now so that you could spend this entire section of the object could occupy the entire second tile space. And so I actually have that with the assign UDIM tile. And in the assign UDIM tile, you can specify which tiles you want. I only do 30 tiles because there's really no limit to UDIM tiles, but if you ever have 30 tiles, more power to you. Like I'll worry about you if you do. And then you can also maximize them. So once you have that, and I set it to tile 001, which of course is the original one, but you can just go back in here and set it to the second tile, and it moves it to the second tile. So it's an easy way to move these around and sort of to take a UV map that you might already have and adjust it for a UDIM workflow. So there's tools like that. There's tools to break texture sets, which are basically multiple UV maps, automatically into UV tiles. And the opposite way, if you have UV tiles, it can split them into multiple UV maps. That's in terms of UV.
Is there a way to do that natively on LightWave? Change UDIM tiles like that? Is your way just faster, or is there just not a way to do it?
Well, the way to do it natively is essentially, hold on. The way to do it natively, is like this. And hoping that you're within the boundaries of that, because you don't see the boundaries of the other UV tiles. So, I mean, I will say that a lot of my tools are workflow improvements. There are absolutely ways to do it. In some of them, there is ways to do it natively. I mean, actually, to be honest, all of them are, because, it's just, you might not necessarily think of them in that sense, and you definitely, after you've done a few of these, you don't want to ever adjust them that way. I mean, I'm hoping that in the future we will have something that is native, but until we do, because as soon as I knew that we were going to have UDIM tiles, I knew that we need something for them to be able to adjust it quickly.
So right now there's no way to visualize the UDIM tiles in LightWave?
Correct. Well, I'm going to say incorrect, because what you could do is, 1 second, I'm going to do it real quick. That should be on my external drive. Hey, oh, maybe it's spinning up. Maybe it just, there we go. Oops. Oh, Jesus. Typing in the dark. So the one cool thing about UDIM tiles actually in LightWave, I actually do like that part of the implementation, is the way you load them is you just load the first tile, or any of the tiles to be honest, and then you select the UDIM space, and you can see it actually reconstructs a virtual image. So the way to visualize them in LightWave is doing this way. That's essentially your workaround.
So you'll have to build how many tiles do you think you need?
They're each a different image file.
Yeah, these are all a different image. They could be all the same. No, yes, you're right.
I get it, but
Yeah.
If I'm working with an object that needs
Yeah. I mean,
tiles,
to be honest, the thing about it is, I mean, even in other applications, whether it's Modo or not, unless you have the tools that I've shown in terms of move to the right or move to specific tiles, UDIMs are painful, whether you see where you move them to or not.
Yeah, and the reason I'm asking is because, for example, if I bring something to substance, when the UDIs are too close to the edges, sometimes substance have
Right.
an issue with that, so we have to like just notch them down.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why when you see like when I maximized this to the UV space, I only go to 98%, so that whatever you do, it'll always stay within. Plus, you have room for baking. I mean, it's exactly because of those reasons, because you don't really want to go to the edge. And
Setting's not exposed, is it?
that setting is not exposed. Could be. That setting is exposed when you do a LightWave unwrap now, where you actually have a padding setting. So if it's at 0, it goes all the way to the edge, and if it's anything else, it'll go in, by however many pixels.
I'm going to expose my ignorance for the group. Can the LightWave 2018 Surface Baker camera bake out
Yes.
an even sequence of tiles?
Yes.
That's
To
fantastic.
Yeah.
separate inch files?
Yes.
That's
So that's another thing.
good. 'Cause
I
you
forgot.
showed-
Jamie, was that you? I forgot who did that. But yes, you can. Where you basically go to, you can now see you can basically set an animated parameter here. And with that, you can basically take your mesh if you have one with a UV map, and then you start at this tile, and then you just do an envelope to the different tiles, so you can bake a sequence.
That could be another one of your upcoming tools is a Python script that just says, hey.
It does that already. I have that in there.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
It's.
Oh, where's the Python?
I mean,
We have a lot of time.
well, the thing is, I really try to take some of these, I love that the LightWave group listens and puts some of these things in. I don't expect them to be able to get the workflow right every single time, because there's all these different people with different workflows and stuff like that. What I try to do is, if I don't like the exact workflow, is I try to simplify it from my end. I mean, one of the things I've been asked for, and that's gotten huge. I gotten so many emails just for this one tool, which is crazy to me, because we now have render presets. Actually, Ken's responsible for that, as far as I know. So he added render presets to the shelf, but there's certain things that aren't included within these render presets. So somebody asked me to write a tool, and that's literally where is it? Quick scene setup. And all that is, it's essentially it's one panel that collects all these other different panels that are within LightWave, and allows you to set everything within one panel and change everything in one panel. So it's functionality that LightWave has natively, but it's rearranging them or presenting them in a way that it's, at least from my point of view, the most efficient way to give it to a user. You can select presets here as well and store them, and it'll save your last settings, things like that. Because otherwise, to set the reconstruction filter, you would have to go into the buffers and set the reconstruction filter for all the buffers. If you want to change the camera resolution, you have to go to the camera panel, the render panel here, the motion blur settings, different things like that, whether you want to enable the noise filter, and do you want to enable the noise filter on all the buffers as well. So and do you want to set up linear color space or sRGB color space? It's just a way to quickly allow the user to set it up versus having to go into all these different panels. What else? Keep them going. Those are good questions.
I just noticed I think you have a typo on camera threshold, but that's not the
It is.
yeah. Reconstruction filter. Dave and I mostly Dave was looking at 2018, and he was wondering if the reconstruction filters have a noticeable effect on the final render.
They definitely do, depending on what you have.
Okay.
They definitely work.
The new render engine that is, because
Yeah.
in the past, there was a clear difference between Gaussian and blanks.
Yeah, you'll still see that difference,
Okay.
especially if you have fine detail. Yeah.
Cool.
What's the upgrade path?
So I started Odoo Tools. I started Odoo Tools when 2015, I think, came out. And so there was an Odoo Tools 2015. And, the thing is, whenever I figure something out, I'll usually just add them, to the script or to the tool set. And so that's what I had done until this version. with the 2015 stuff. And then initially I thought, well, do I keep 2015 separate or do I just roll it into one? And it turns out that I want as little support or as little different product support as possible. I want to have it just one tool. And so the upgrade path is, since the release, which was on the 1st, I've already added, I think, 8 or 9 tools, something like that. They'll always kind of just be added until probably the new version of LightWave comes out. And then 2015 people always got a special price to upgrade to 2018. That will always continue. There are going to be some scripts. There is this little thing that, which is pretty cool, which is the pie menu. That's a separate tool. And the main reason why I did this separately rather than integrate it into the tool set was because, unfortunately, it doesn't work on the Mac. It does not work on the Mac. It's PC only. I haven't gotten the energy yet to make it work on the Mac. All the other tools do work on the Mac, so it's not that I'm anti-Mac. It's a pain in the butt. But the nice thing about the pie menu is that it's context sensitive. So everything you see here now is related to what you might want to do with a camera. If you go select the light, now you have certain things like that belong to the light. If you have an object selected, it's object specific. If you want a scene specific menu, here's a scene specific menu. And the big difference here is one, I call it pie menu. In this particular case, is a grid. It has a whole menu editor that you can actually create all your different menus. But the nice thing about it, and that's something that unfortunately currently you can't really do within LightWave or within the LightWave native system, you can pass arguments onto commands within this system, within the pie menu. So, if you clone something 10 times all the time, you can just make a button that says clone 10 times. And it's as simple as, looking at the clone selected, for example, and you can see the optional argument is 1. There's special arguments, so there's a lot of tools within LightWave that aren't multi-select aware. With this, you can make them multi-select aware. You just add them as an argument. There's certain specific things you can do. You can also compound commands. So if you add a new object, then you clone it 3 times, then you offset each of the objects by 1 meter or whatever. If you wanted to have that as one action, you can store that as one action within this tool menu. That's what that is for. And it's any plugin, of course, can be mapped to the script. And I mainly have, if you have the surface editor, there's a whole bunch of different things to clean up surfaces, to copy nodes within surfaces to another material, to there's so many different things. It's just whatever you're using a lot, because the one thing as a plugin developer that we can't do is we can't add things to menus within LightWave. We can only add them in very specific places. We can't add them everywhere. So the pie menu really was created to make it so that I can add tools wherever they make sense in terms of the context that they're in. And that's the only way on how I could figure it out, for now, until there's definitely room for change there, and hopefully that change is coming. So.
And that's a separate tool now?
That is a separate tool. Yeah, that's a separate tool. I think it's $34 or something like that, but it's a separate tool, and it only works for layout. It doesn't work for modeler, mainly because of some of the structural differences within modeler. So one of the issues that we the LightWave group kind of knew that might occur is that there's a huge change between 2015 and 2018 in terms of your surfacing. So whatever can as best as it can stuff from 2015 will go into 2018 as best as it can. But really, to get the best quality out of it, you kind of have to sort of start over in a way. and set it up in the proper workflow in 2018. Some of the issues that people have brought up, or some of the problems that people have brought up, is that, well, once they're in 2018, if they realize that they can't do something and they want to go back to 2015, there's no way for them to maintain, there's really no way for them to maintain that object in terms of the surfacing setup. Even though it might have initially started off in 2015, you might have brought in the object in 2018, readjusted stuff like that, saved it, and if you ever wanted to bring that surface, that object back into 2018, back into 2015, all your material setup would be gone. And to be honest, that's kind of a natural thing in a way. It's like, you have a new format, and that's, you're just going to have to get past it. But trying to fix that is something where we're going to start here on something and make a few. Actually, just make my favorite name. So on the left side, we have 2015, and we just have a simple object with two surfaces. And I have something now called, and I might not have the menu in here. 1 second. Nope, give me 2 seconds here. Another nice feature in 2018 is, and I'm in 2015, is in 2018 we now have an import and replace branch. So it saves this sort of step where you go.
Wasn't import branch like a long-standing feature?
Import and replace.
Import and replace.
It'll replace the branch
So,
you're importing over.
yeah. So here, model tab. Okay, so let me see whether that's actually in here.
And your tools ship with branches.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
And you're more than welcome to make suggestions about how the branch could be better organized. It's just there's so many tools. That's where there's two branches. I didn't know how to do it any better, So, but some people actually have asked if they could suggest certain things, and I said, please, be my guest. Okay, I'm gonna have to re-add the entire plugin. Damn it. I don't have it in here, Ken.
It's in your script, though, right?
It's in the script, I believe. Let's just see. Slot. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So I sort of did something that I call material slots. And so in this particular case, we can store a material, and when you bring it up, a GUI comes up, and I basically allow you to store, 21 materials. So there's a default material, which if you use my tools, automatically gets loaded dependent on which application you load. If you store it as a default material in 2015, when you load the object in 2015, that material always gets restored. If you store a default material in 2018, when you load it into 2018, the default material there gets loaded. But you could, any point in time, let's say, call this some material. And you can save this now. So we'll save this object. And we will bring that into 2018. And you can see 2018 tried to maintain the surface, and that's all nice and dandy. But let's say we change the surface in here, and changing the surface, I'm literally talking. You could add nodes to it. You can make it an octane setup. Whatever it is. And if we in here, if I find the tab, it should be in here. I don't have it added here either. Jeez. Bear with me for just a minute. Okay, I actually did have it in there under experimental. If we store this in here now, you can see that it's going to be the exact same GUI. It already tells you that there's a slot number 1 that has the material that's pre-2018. And we can store another one here, so we'll call it our new, oops, we'll store it here, our new material. And save this. So now we're going to save this object again. And by default now, if I go back to 2015 and load this object, and hopefully I have Ken's loader in here. Oh. So annoying. Okay, and I can't download it. I can't download it either. But by default, well, I'll just explain what's going to happen.
You can export an LWO too. It'll have the.
Oh, it'll have the tags?
It should have the tags. You'll get the error messages
Yeah.
about this.
So.
There's an update. There's an LWO3 loader for 2015, and he found a bug in it. It's been fixed, but he doesn't have the fixed build on his machine.
Yeah, I don't normally work off my laptop, so. Okay, so this is, this is our original object that's back into 2015, and it's a default gray surface. Our surfaces are still here, but we don't have anything else. We obviously we wouldn't expect the red surface to come in because that's a 2018 surface. But with that, we effectively lost our material within the original object. However, we can now do a restore material, and if we pick slot 1, it'll tell you this is what's actually, that there is a material here. And when we load it back up, you can see that we have successfully restored the material. So we can easily go back and forth. And there's a different loader that if you load the object within my tool, it will automatically restore the default 2015 surface. So you can literally go seamlessly back and forth between the applications. And it doesn't just have to be between 2015 and 2018, but you could store different looks for an object, and everything is always stored within the object. There's no external files, no referenced anything. It's all just within the object itself.
So you could use it just for backing up your surface data.
Yeah.
So even if that
image maps, whatever nodes, because a lot of them, we don't have the DP nodes anymore in 2018. So, you could keep the 2015 set up with the DP nodes, work in 2018. If you then realize, hey, I got to get back to 2015 because I do need the DP stuff and there's no way I can live without them, you can just restore that surface and go and continue on. And just because you restore that surface doesn't mean that the 2018 surface is gone. That still remains in its slot. So you really have some flexibility there. And there's no limit in terms of how many you can store other than object space or disk space, because the object does get larger, but the object gets larger in very, very small increments. It doesn't store another complete copy or anything like that in there. It just stores some of the changes. Anything else?
Would something like that work? You're in modeler.
Yeah, it's same in layout.
Because one use that I could see where that would be useful in layout would be for saving variations of an object and being able to use it without saving 10 different copies of the same object. If there's a way to load it up.
There is that. You can do that.
Almost a scene-based surface.
I have different things for that. You could use it exactly for that. That's easily done. But there is, in the toolset, there is something called snapshots. And what snapshots allows you to do is, hold on, let's just go into that. And that slot section or the slot UI that you saw there is the same in layout. So, there's an equivalent tool in layout as well. But for look development or different, one of the things, it's again sort of also working in a team environment. Plus. So let's just load these objects here. And just going to use the objects. Save. It's also not updated. Sphere. Oops. And toroid. And now we're going to go to the snapshots tool. So the snapshots tool is very simple. You're gonna give it a path, and this path could be again on a network drive. This could be shared via Dropbox, whatever it is. And if I bring up VPR, I'm going to bring the surface editor. So at some point in time, let's just assume we're going to call this our base setup, and we create a snapshot. We can now adjust the surfaces to whatever else it is, and call it pink or purple toroid, just to identify it. At any point in time, you can now go back to the snapshots, and these are always going to be there. So you can work an entire day without ever having to save another copy of your object. You just save these snapshots, and again, as soon as you save them, they'll be available to anybody else that's monitoring the same directory. So when you work with a director on some look dev or something, and you want to pass it on to an artist, you just tell them which snapshot to load. And this works also in terms of not just the surfacing, but object properties, visibility, states, whether you want the object visible or not. You can also, for example, you can see that this state is both objects are gray, and this state is cyan and purple. But if we wanted to only update the selected object, so only the toroid, we can do that by just taking that from that state. And you could essentially create a new state. So the whole selective restoring is great, because you might have one artist that's working on this object, another artist that works on a different object, and so you can just kind of pick and choose what you want from each of the states. And there's more coming on that front, but that's all I kind of want to. That's what's included right now.
Do you have anything that? Do you have in the 300 tools that you've written?
380.
Uh-huh.
Just kidding.
Do you have a package scene that preserves subfolders?
Do I have a package scene? Well, scene presets do.
Scene presets. Okay, so you can take your
You haven't
scene.
shown the scene presets.
I haven't shown the scene presets, but again, it's the same concept of.
So if you needed to package a scene for cloud rendering,
Yeah,
you could use this tool to package it for cloud rendering?
yeah. I mean, it essentially, okay. The scene presets do exactly what you're asking for. It's
But in one file.
in one file.
And you could open up a blank and then.
Yes. So
There.
it would be very simple to take that and make a separate tool to literally just create a zip file or whatever that preserves the original structure with everything. But I have not done that. It's not a separate tool. It's a preset right now.
No, but that still opens up possibilities for Dave and another LightWave artist are having trouble with interchange because package scene destroys their
Right.
organization,
Right.
and content manager doesn't get everything.
Right.
So if this grabs everything, then
Yes.
hey,
It grabs VDBs and all the sort of new things that exist within LightWave. And the beautiful thing is, again, if it doesn't grab something, I can fix it. But as far as I know, it grabs everything that I've thrown at it,
that's
and preserves the structure.
So that scene preset saves just one file that encompasses everything?
It's one file. Again, everything is self-contained. So if we go into, just double-clicking on one of these, and you have a couple different options where you can either do a load scene, which basically loads the scene. You can do a load from scene, which adds it to your scene, or you can say import the scene objects only, because sometimes you might not want the light, like if it's just a character that you have within a scene, which includes bones and all that kind of stuff, that's what you might want. So when you do that, you now have that scene in here, and this is one of the testing scenes. You could use these to, I don't know how many people use the default.lws thing in LightWave, where you can basically store your scene default. When you do a clear scene, that always gets reloaded if you use that option. But with this, you could, for example, set different. You can have a scene that's set up for environment lights. You can set up a scene that's, it has some other lighting or whatever it is, and very quickly just load them and restore them.
And it'll unpack it to all the subfolders that were present in the original.
Correct.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
What's the extension on that?
They're literally preset files within the system. If you were to look at on the file system, you would go mad.
It's essentially random.
I will show you what they look like in terms of. So just the scene presets, for example. This is what they look like.
Okay, wow.
And that's part of the LightWave preset system. But to be honest, the beautiful thing about it is you don't really have to care what they are. I do have plans making some more. Well, I do have plans making some more management tools here in terms of, if you wanted to load in an entire preset library, things like that, which right now aren't there. But then it's also, that kind of thing is kind of. I want to be careful with that, because really I want to work more with Ken together on some of the stuff to get some of that functionality natively within LightWave, so that these can be even more efficient. And the one thing I'd like to say is, a lot of people say like, well, it would be great if that was native, and I think you have to be really careful when you say that, because one, not everything can be native. Two, it might really not be what you want, because and if you then want to change a certain functionality in terms of this is a very simple example. When you bring up a preset system, if it was native, it might just load them in. But what if I want to do all these different options? What if I want to add other options to that? You then wouldn't be able to go in between there. And so, the one thing, or the thing that I love doing with these is coming up with these sort of ways and adding these options. And then at some point in time, when people like it and they all love it and stuff, at some point in time, I'm sure they can be made natively. But at that point in time, when they then are native, they're much better implementations, because they've been tested. It's been tested in the wild. You can see they know what users want. Is it worth doing even? Or is it better because for me, I much rather have them focus on the infrastructure to allow people like me to do these kind of things. Because I have production experience. I'm by no means a developer or anything like Ken or Jamie and that kind of stuff. There's no way I get that level. But I have the production experience. And that's what my tools are based in, and I think there's a real benefit to that. And there's a real benefit in working together with them as closely as we have. Yeah, there's a video for a lot of them. So if you go online, wherever they are, there's a video for most of them. There's just so many that it'd be impossible to go through them all.
That might be another tool of somehow accessing, okay, I've got this particular strip, but
Well, the thing is,
I have to use it for a week or two.
the one thing is actually there are these tool intro videos. So there is a button here that if you click it, it actually goes to there. But the tool set is still so new that I'm hoping that as people create things with it, some of it again will be shared, hopefully, so that people get a better idea. If you've ever dealt with object sequences, loading them into LightWave, it's been a nightmare forever, because when you load in an object sequence and you scrub, your surface will be bye-bye every single time. So you either do this whole step where you save, you do a batch thing where you basically copy the surface to every single object and save it back out. But every time you make a change, you have to do that whole thing again. So I wrote a very simple object replacement plugin that, by doing so,
And it'll work on a render farm?
yes.
Oh, that's so much better than the real flow.
Yeah.
Dealt with that,
Yes.
right?
So there's literally an object replacement, and what that essentially does, it allows you to give it a surface library file, and that surface library file gets put on the object. Again, other than that, it's exactly the same as what the LightWave replacement thing does, except you don't have to worry about whether the surface gets applied.
Yeah, I'll be making some purchases tonight.
There's also hopefully people have seen the video, the whole render time object replacement, so you can have proxies in layout working with low-res objects, and at render time the object actually gets replaced with the high-res object, which is kind of neat. That's this right here, and all you literally do is you feed it two objects. You feed it whether it's a low-res or a high-res, and that's it. So very simple setup. Like I said, I wish I could say there's a focus, but I don't know that there was. You know, it's more like as I'm working on a daily basis, like, okay, here I see something that could be better, adding a tool there and things like that.
So are those separate, those last two, the object replacement?
No, that's all included.
I think the only thing that's separate was the pie menu.
Yeah, the pie menu is separate. The pie menu and the substance reader is separate. Other than that, everything is included.
And could you just clarify for me again, I'm sorry, just where all this stuff is saved, is it all saved in a prefix folder?
The
that
preset
you
system.
can put onto a laptop or put onto
So the preset system, LightWave has, you know, by default in your whatever your users folder is, you can find by default you can find render properties and surface editor presets. They've always been there. By default now, if you use my system, it'll also make a OD presets folder. Inside of that, you have all the different, you know, instance of presets, things like that.
So those where the libraries will go
This is where the libraries will go by default.
by default?
You can then change it in the preferences. There's a edit location list for presets, and you can now have more than one presets. And you can say basically, you know, let's say we'll just add one here. Oops,
Go to add.
yeah, I always get that wrong sometimes. But so we'll put one on the desktop. Presets. Oops, new folder. Presets. Whatever. We'll fine with that spelling. My spelling is usually better, but. So now, you know, you can see in here that we have another library. You can make that library read-only. So if it's something that, you know, you might have project files, project object files that you've approved, you don't want anybody to write into or anything like that, but, you know, depending on how your structure is set up. So you can make them read-only, and you can make them the default saving material, because by default, it saves in the user folder. So once you have that, though, you now under here you have this user. That's your local preset library in your config folder. But we now also have the misspelled presets folder here. That's on the desktop. And when you go in there, yeah, there's nothing in there, but we could easily, you know, add something in there.
So every different parameter you've discussed today, services or objects or whatever.
Or instancers or anything, they all get stored in there. It's one location.
Okay.
Well, it's one location that has all these different branches.
Okay.
I'm assuming that respects the -C option, so if you redirect your config.
Yes.
And future iterations of Solution Management will offer ways for us to share our presets with other people.
It's not future. You can do that now.
Just give them a folder.
Yes.
and, yeah, it works.
Or just a single preset. You know, that really doesn't matter. You could literally send anybody, whether you send it via email or whatever it is, you send them one of these files and they put it into their library and they're good to go.
You just have to figure out which one corresponds to.
Well, if you send them an IES light and then they put it in the object folder, you will actually get the thumbnail, but it won't load anything.
Oh, I meant like which one of those thumbnails corresponds to which one of those files,
You could make a change, like change the file name, change the preset name,
and see where it
and then it
updates.
would update the file time.
You can do that, or for now, what you could do is if you do a search or anything like that, again, it puts it in this custom folder. It will, a filter folder. You know, let me just go real quick in the.
Just create your own container, create your own folder, and then just move what
Yeah.
you want, or copy it to that,
That
and then
sounds like a,
that's
Yeah.
everything in that folder.
Just export.
sounds like the best way.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I am thinking, again, it's one of those things, and it needs more discussion, you know, with Ken, in terms of, because I could easily create something that will be a GUI where you select which presets you want and you export those or zip them up to a single file. But I don't necessarily want to do that work if it's something that we can, in the short-term future, fix within LightWave. Again, those are all things that I have no control over in terms of that's what the system does. And I can't change the underlying system. I can just work within the system. But those management systems, like being able to select multiples in here, for example, would all be things that should be really done natively without doing some other workaround.
The snapshots are stored in their own folder.
Snapshots are stored in their own folder. Yeah, that's the one where I showed with the pink and the cyan toroid. That's, again, you specify the folder. Typically, that's a scene-specific folder, so I would store it wherever you store the scene. Because whether you close LightWave and open it back up with that scene 10 years from now, those presets will still, or those states, would still be there. So you can always recall them, at any point in time. So I typically store those within the scenes folder in a subfolder that says whatever the scene name is. And to be honest, I did that initially by default, where I didn't let the user specify where it is, and then people were complaining that they would like to specify where that is. So there you go. Trying to see what else there's in here. There is silly stuff like, show that real quick, if people still want to see. Let me bring up the object presets again. So we'll take the trees here, and we'll just load a few of them. And so one script that I've done, again, it's a very simple thing, but it's very useful sometimes, where you just literally select them all. And then you go to Gridify, and it'll automatically detect that, hey, the best grid selection would be this. You can put them 1 meter apart on the Y. And what it does, it just does a simple grid like that. Sometimes it's beneficial if you want to just take a quick look at things and lay things out. And it's just one of the scripts.
You have an object preset system, right? That's what you use.
Yeah, that's what I use.
Does it support the shape primitive object?
Actually, you know what? No, it doesn't.
Because I've seen all kinds of people on Facebook using the shape primitives to do stuff.
I'd have to test that. I don't know that it does. If not, I will add that tonight. I mean, it does do it for the volumetrics, for the new hypervoxels, but I don't know that it does it for the shape, because I think what I do. Well, I'm just going to try it.
It's the same mesh primitive.
It doesn't hurt trying. So shape. So we'll make that a new. Make this oops. And we're just going to add it. Where's my GUI? There we go. And add it. Object needs to be saved first. Yeah, so.
You can't save a null.
Yep. But that's something I'm pretty sure I can just take out. If it's a null with that.
Mm-hmm.
So you could certainly right now save that as a scene preset. But it would be beneficial. I can see the benefit of saving that as a shape preset.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, for people that do any sort of animation where they do, there's a cache master, and essentially what it does is it lets you switch between keyframe-driven animation and an MDD bake. So if you say cache it, it will do an MDD bake on the background, swap it to an MDD bake. And if you wanted to uncache it, it'll switch back to the animation. So that's sometimes for playback, it is a huge improvement. Instead of doing all the bone evaluation, You just play back the cache. Things like that. There is a, if you use Substance, the Substance Painter or anything like that, there is a direct export from both modeler or layout to Substance, and which basically just loads the object in Substance and lets you start painting. There's a PBR importer, which if you have PBR materials, it'll hook them up correctly with all the nodal systems within, and it supports Octane and natively. There really is a crap load of stuff.
What is localized images and objects?
So localized images and objects, it's again one of those things where sometimes before the preset system, you would drag an object from somewhere that's not necessarily within your content folder. You know, the images might be outside, objects might be outside of your content folder. If you click localized images and localized objects, it will literally copy that object into the content folder with the images and of course all that stuff and make it local, replace it. So now you have it local.
But if there's an external asset like that in a scene and you use the scene preset, does it localize it?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, the presets itself, it keeps everything always local. This is more like another tool if you aren't using the presets or if you're just screwing around, you know, and maybe you don't have everything in the presets. And a lot of times it's easy to, hey, I know this HDR from here, you know, so you just get it and you drag it into LightWave versus actually copying it into the content structure and then putting it into LightWave. The localized images will take care of that. Layout primitives is another one of those things where, I mean, I use these tools, these things a lot, you know, to make quick objects, but the issue with them is always like there's no UVs on them and they're also not necessarily subdiv friendly. So the layout primitives because sometimes you just want to test something with the UV. The layout primitives let you do, you know, all these different types of primitives, and they have a UV map on them and things like that. And they're also built so that they could be called as a command. So you can actually, again, you have this whole entire thing here. But if you look at scene presets here, or my pie menu, you see there's a create sphere, cube, plane, stuff like that. All these, when I call them, you know, they just call that command. I try to separate most of my commands, or pretty much all my commands, from the UI, so that they can be called from within other scripts even, you know, and things like that. So this object now has a UV map. The one cool thing about this is if you have an object like this, save that. So if you have an object like this, and you know, I told you that it has a UV, but how do you really know? And especially, how do you really know what the UV looks like? You can now go to custom objects here, and we will have somewhere Octane show UV, and you could specify the UV map, and it will show you in the viewport, you know, what the UV map of that actually looks like. And it's the same with MDDs, for example. Sometimes, you know, again, unless you know it's the right MDD or not, then you're good. If you know it's the right MDD, you're good. But if you just want to see what's actually contained within the MDD, you can do a null with a custom object that says it's a show MDD, and it'll show it in the viewport as a preview.
Is there one for XMLs as well?
No, but could be added. I was actually thinking of making it actually a completely standalone tool, so that people could just drag their MDDs onto it and look at them, because they're not just always used within LightWave. So they're beneficial to have that as an external tool. There's a lot of external tools that come with this as well. There's an Alembic particles to PFX. And so if you work with Houdini or if you work with Modo, they all can save their particles as Alembic files. LightWave cannot read those Alembic files, but I have a tool where you just drag and drop your Alembic file onto them, and it creates a PFX file, which can then be loaded into an emitter.
Batch convert too.
So batch convert, you know what it does, don't you?
No.
Really?
380 tools. I don't know them all.
So what well, actually, okay, so before batch convert, there's a thing called convert T to nodes. So a huge thing was, okay, we used to have the standard material in LightWave, and when we map textures on it, a lot of times they're in the texture slot. You bring them into LightWave, well, now you have a standard material with texture slots on them, but you can't really use principled materials with texture slots anymore. They have to be nodes. So what do? Ken added a convert in the surface editor here. There is a convert layer to standard nodes, which was done a little bit after I started my tool. Now the difference between this particular tool and my tool is that if you have any, well, we'll just make one. It's easier to show than to. So we now have something texture mapped into that slot. If we convert this to standard nodes or principled nodes, and you go into here, hey, convert layered to principal. There you go. So you can now see that the way natively how it's done is it copies this layer stack. I didn't like that, or let me put it a different way. When I did it, which was before this was implemented, I wanted the actual image node. I don't like, if I go nodal, I'm going to go nodal. So I don't want it necessarily in here. Now you might not be able to replicate everything that you can actually do in here, but at least you have all the nodes, all the image maps separately. And you can easily split them out, reuse them, and stuff like that. Because for each of these nodes, if this texture was being used within another layered material, you would have, if you replace one, you would have to replace it in all the different layered nodes versus just hooking up to the same node. It's just essentially a different way of doing it. But it also allows to convert to Octane. So the textured nodes here, you can basically specify, you want to do it on just the selected surfaces, all objects, or selected objects, so you have more granular control. And you can keep the same, material as you might have, which is standard, or you can change it to principal or an Octane material, which then automatically sets up the image nodes in Octane, to projections and all these different things. What batch convert does on top of that is it does it on an entire directory. So, because converting your library into the new format is cumbersome if you have to do it one by one. So I just did something where you basically feed it an entire directory and say what you want to do and how you want to convert it, and it does it all of the objects within that directory. Again, just the CG Access library, I think there's thousands of objects in there, and I wasn't going to do them by hand. Just takes too long.
So if you clear out my conversion and then do your conversion, what's it look like?
Let's see. So if you do my conversion, and hopefully it'll work, principled, you can change, so define also what kind of workflow you want it to be. But so you can see here that you actually get the image node, and that's the actual image node with the projection versus getting the layered material. That's the difference between them. Because again, if this texture was referenced in different areas, in different T slots, you would have, and you wanted to then change out this texture, you would have to go into each of the nodes that was set up natively. You couldn't just readjust one. Just a different workflow, Yeah. There's silly things like so if you had, for example, two objects and you just want to swap their positions, there's things like swap items. Oops. if you only have one object selected, then you can say, I want to swap the camera with the object, and now the camera is here and the object is, wherever the camera was. Just different helper tools that sometimes are useful. And again, a lot of them are literally 5 lines of code, but they have to be written somehow. I mean, it's one of the other things that I actually intended when I wrote this tool set, and maybe it was more indirectly than what I set out to do, is I wanted to give people a sort of an overview of what can actually be done now within LightWave. It's amazing. I mean, there really isn't, scripting-wise and workflow-wise, there really isn't a lot that you can't do. So, my hope is that more people get inspired to maybe start looking into that in terms of how to do these kind of things. Because the biggest barrier of entry is your thought that you can't do it. Once you get past that thought, it's actually not that bad. And, because we need more people. It can't just be me and a couple other guys that do these kind of things. We need more viewpoints and more people doing this kind of stuff and hammering on the subsystems so that Ken and Jamie and all the other guys can actually fix them.
Yep.
Or add features.
Yeah. It's like when people want something specifically. I mean, the good thing about the OD tools is like if you work in LightWave and you find something cumbersome and you ask yourself, God, there's got to be some sort of fix for that, most likely it'll be in OD tools. You'll find a lot of them. But if they're not, talk about them, like bring them up, so that they either can be added or can be fixed, whatever it is. If people just continue to do the same workarounds all the time, then there's no chance to get them fixed. So.
You have a submit bugs button. Can they also submit features?
Yeah, you can use the submit bugs button to also submit features. Yes, and there are people like Scott that have done that very well.
It's always my fault.
It is always your fault. So.
That's the great thing about it too. It's like, I'll submit a feature and 20 minutes later sometimes I'll get an email saying, hey, there's a new version up there.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I've been able to do with this is I think I've touched every subsystem there is in LightWave. So I'm usually pretty aware of what, if that feature request is a no-no, then it's typically because it just can't be done, even though there's not a lot of those. Sometimes there's things that I just don't want to do, but for the most part, because I know the system so well now, it's fairly easy to add these things or make changes.
So how do you keep all 300, if you're a LightWave user and you buy OD tools, how do you keep all 380 tools? What's the best strategy for keeping all those tools straight?
Well,
obviously it looks like most of them are named fairly descriptively.
I try. You can of course name them yourself, whatever you want to do. The biggest thing is, and this is funny for me to say, but don't think about them as 380 tools. If you're literally, because I've had a couple people email me that bought the tool set and they go, you know what, I don't know that it's for me. I'm just completely overwhelmed. And the thing is I think you can't think of it that way, because you will get into a situation where you would like to have a change and you look and it's like, oh, there's a tool for that. Look at it that way. Yes, the preset system is a grand thing, and I think everybody should be using that. But then there's all these other things that you'll find. The AOV system, really, honestly, if you work with a lot of compositors, it's fantastic how easy it is for the 3D artist now to create all these different buffers or mats that some person might want. So there's a few of those that are sort of like pillar features. The instance randomizer is another thing. I could show it if people haven't seen the video, but I'll show it real quick. It's easy enough. There's just so many different things in there. I think if you look at the combined thing and you go like, holy crap, that's a lot of stuff. And I look at it a lot of times that way and like, holy shit, I did a lot of stuff. But I think ease into it, It's like, don't get caught up and think more about that. Holy crap, I got 380 tools for this amount of money, and they're not going to go away, it's that kind of thing.
And they come organized, so if you want to put them somewhere on the menu that makes it, you use maybe 6 of them.
Yeah.
The menu of all of them, there we pick 6 and put them wherever you want them.
They definitely come organized based on my brain, and it might not be everybody's brain. I understand that too, but that's why, again, if people make a suggestion, to like this could be clearer or this could be better, I'll be more than happy to implement it. It's just hard because there's so many tools, but for the most part, I think people have been getting along with it fairly easy. There are all the different, subsections. And these are just the tools that I just shown are just sort of some of the new tools in 2018. There's all the 2015 tools that are included within the same thing. And yeah, that's another 100. it's just like, it's like crap. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is 2 years worth of work at least.
It's, on and off, it's probably a year's worth of work. But a year's worth of work with, because I have to do projects too. So, I can do this only in my free time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's been very rewarding. It's like, I was telling, Emmanuel over there earlier, some of the larger projects I've done, if we would have had some of these tools, oh my God, it would have been so much less pain, and it's not even like, it's not a LightWave problem, it's a problem that you find in any application, whether you use Maya, whether you use Modo, whatever it is, some of the external files on within projects are killer. Figuring out that you got the right one, did I get all the files that are associated with it? It's just a nightmare, and I try to literally get rid of all of that. I don't want to bore people, so unless there's something specifically that people want, I can do that real quick. For people that haven't seen the video, this is again another tool that I released a tool set with the instancer presets, and some artist saw it and he goes, "Could you do this?" And I'm like, "Why the hell would you ever want to do that?" And then he explained it, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool." And then I did it, and it took literally a couple hours. And no, honestly, for some reason, I didn't get what he was after until I actually started programming and saw it. And sometimes, there's a lot of things. I think Ken and I have that relationship sometimes where I'm sure there's times where he goes, "And why the hell are you asking for that?" Until I actually show him, why. And then, I think that it's natural. I'm fine. It's fun actually, because through the development you realize, holy shit, that's actually a massive tool. But let me just do this. 40 meter, do a ground plane here. Then we'll bring up the, actually save that. Yeah. I'm definitely not used to my small screen. Okay, then we'll bring up the object presets. And we will take, so a whole bunch of different rubbles. And then they also have this building thing, building and slum type things. So we'll load a couple buildings. Yep. And maybe one more. Okay, so actually this one is maybe a little bit large, so not this one. So then what we'll do is we'll go to the scene editor and we'll select the shacks. Oops. And hit actually the correct key here, Shift. And so I have something called the instance randomizer. And what it essentially does, so again, a whole bunch of different things that you can do. By default, we're just going to add an instancer. You can set up, unfortunately, in the instancer SDK, there's a difference when you set up instances in in Octane, you actually can't make the base object inactive. Then it will actually kill all the instances. So you actually have to move the object off screen, and that's the difference between native and Octane. So, but we're going to do this natively. We're going to select the ground plane. We're going to do a surface distribution here, and we're going to color the instances in the CNet or orange. And let's say, out of the shacks in this particular area, let's say there's maybe, 20 shacks, something like that. We'll change the orientation a little bit, randomize that. You could also set so that they only rotate in 90 and 180 degrees increments. But once we'll do that, we'll make sure all the options here. And maybe that's a little bit too many for that area. So we'll run this again. Instance randomizer, we'll go and replace. It saves the last options. So we'll do, let's see, just 10. 360. Shader. Actually, it doesn't save the last options. I should add that. And we're going to do a little bit of rubble. I should have made my object. Oops. And you'll do the instance randomizer again. And this time we're going to do additive. Surface, shaded, another 360.
You pick your instance right?
Yep. I really need to, that's one of the things, I really need to make this one restore the last settings. Let's say 200, and hit OK. And now, you sort of, it takes all the different instances and sets them up so that, it uses all of them. So if you wanted to just do like a destructive hurricane thing or something like that, it's very, very simple. It's the same. You could use trees and grass and, all these kind of different things and very quickly populate a scene with, all kinds of different crap. And so it's literally just a randomization of instances. I mean, granted, a destruction scene sort of is perfect for this kind of thing because of the randomization thing, but there's a lot of different uses, for these kind of things. And there's tools in the toolkit where you can bake these instances now very quickly into objects, into object clones, so that you could remove any of them, like any of the overlapping houses. And once you have removed them, you can also convert clones back into instances. So there's tools for all that kind of stuff. So
When you clone back from objects into instances, do they maintain their position?
yes, that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.